the reason for the season. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Joyeux Noël, in any language. May God bless you and yours with an abundance of blessings this Christmas season and in the brand new year. Merry Christmas.
All right, 18 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in to WOCA this Wednesday morning. It is the time of year when I always think back to New York, because New York City was always kind of a magical place on Christmas time. But you know, and I know so many people who live here in Ocala have visited New York. They posted on Facebook. They look like they're having a grand time. And so many people say, gosh, I would love to live in that city. And yeah, you might like to live in the city, but the truth is that it's mixed feelings when you actually live there. It's like, you know, you're in the heart of the world, kind of, sort of, is what it feels like. But at the same time, it's like, gosh, I can't wait to get out of the city. And then when you move away, you know, you're so glad you got away until, you know, a few years have passed by and you go, gosh, I miss the city. Sometimes you can go back in a book. You can sort of be put there. We have some books here that did that for me. I did not finish them, I'll be honest with you, but I will. And they did take me there. But it also reminded me of the reasons that I was glad to be away. Adam Dunn is the author of all three books. They are called Rivers of Gold, The Big Dogs, and Saint Underground. Adam is a freelance writer. His bylines include work in CNN, or for CNN rather, BBC, Publishers Weekly, Soma, the South China Morning Post. The South China Morning Post, really?
I think that's awesome.
The San Francisco Chronicle, something called Paper, and of course these three books. Adam Dunn, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning to you.
So you're originally from New York? Did you move away?
I did.
What happened? You didn't like it anymore? Like me?
When I had my first child, he was 2 months old, and I wheeled him in his stroller 2 blocks away from our apartment to see his first chalk corpse outline on the sidewalk where a shooter had taken a header 4 stories off a fire escape after murdering 3 people in an apartment in a drug deal gone bad. And I remember telling him at 2 months old, I said, take a good look, kid, because this won't be your last one. That's about the time I decided to get my family out of this.
How long after that did you move away?
Only about a year.
Well, so where'd you move to?
Connecticut.
Oh, I love Connecticut. Well, thank you for being on the air with us today. But do you ever miss it like I do? Well, see, you're so close, though. You could get there any day. I mean, you just drive over there.
I could. I would not drive because I love my car too much. I can't really say I miss it, Mr. Whitler. It was time to go. It's okay to look back, but I think it's best visited in my books.
And that's kind of what I was doing. And New York can be painted a couple different ways in words, and you've painted it in the way that anybody who has ever moved away. My dad was a New York City police officer, so he saw the worst of the worst because he was always having to respond to those kinds of calls that the rest of us would just stumble upon. And I'm sure that was one of the main reasons why they moved away, my mom and dad. So tell me about your writing. Are you a writer by profession? It sounds like you are.
I am. I was in the publishing industry for years, then I went out on my own. I started writing first for the trade, then for the national press, then the international press. And around about the time I got married, I wanted to get some books of my own on the market. I was looking around for ideas. I had just done a 4-part series on the taxi industry in New York City, which gave me lots of contacts and a lot of great people who helped me with my research. And not long after that, the bottom fell out of the real estate market, and the ideas began to come on thick and fast. And 1 year later, the bottom fell out of the stock market, and I had my series.
Gosh.
All right. So did all 3 books come out at once?
They did. They did. The first book, Rivers of Gold, was originally published in hardcover back in 2010, and then I got the rights back to my work, and I published them all under my own imprint, my own publishing company, which I started this year, Dunn Books, and they all came out in mid-November together.
Wow, good for you. You're an entrepreneur as well as an author.
And you were extremely lucky to get your rights back, because sometimes when a person gives up their rights, they don't ever get it back.
I wouldn't say that I was lucky. It took several years, a bit of legal wrangling, mostly a lot of patience, a lot of tooth grinding. But yes, got it done. And once I had it done, I knew I was never going to give them away again. That's when I got the idea to start my own company.
Gosh.
Could these 3 books be bound as one big book?
Eventually they could, but there's more to come. After all, you only have books 1 through 3. I'm working on number 4 right now, and 5 and 6 are right behind it.
Oh, okay. So for the audience, because we kind of have a little advantage over the audience, they haven't read the books, I would assume. Give us the thumbnail sketch of the storylines.
This is set during the Second Great Depression, which for most of us began in 2008 and is still going on now. But in my view, this is set in a sort of parallel universe where the Depression kicked in full force in 2010. And I have a city kind of on its knees, financial ruin, bankruptcy, municipal agencies in tatters, crime is running rampant, unemployment is sky high, as are epidemic disease rates. It's really not the sort of New York that you would want to visit. And in this new economy, I try to imagine what sort of people would thrive. And the people I came up with, well, in Rivers of Gold, you meet a young guy named Rennie, who's a fashion photographer by day and a drug dealer by night on the city's new underground illegal party circuit, which I imagined as the speakeasies of the early 20th century during Prohibition, upgraded for the early 21st century, in which they would be connected digitally through a wireless network of entrepreneurs like Rennie, but also physically through taxi cabs. Now, on this, I drew upon historical precedent. Taxi cabs were used in Prohibition, both to move contraband booze around,
really?
But also to take prospective customers from speakeasies to brothels to meet prostitutes. So,
Right.
you had the cab network actually as a functioning part of the underground economy. So all I had to do was just kind of translate that into the 21st century and what people would be using taxi cabs for illegally then. And you can read about the rest for yourself. I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, that's too funny.
That's the birth of Uber. They really have an alter ego here.
or maybe Uber is the alternative, so you don't get involved with that. Now, when they do this, I don't know if this is a fictional question or not, but when the cabs do this, is it a deal with the cab driver and the cab company has nothing to do with it, or does the cab company actually make some kind of a deal and profit from it?
Well, the way that I saw it, since I did do a lot of research on the actual taxi industry in New York, the drivers themselves are under tremendous pressure. The industry is very much stacked against them. And if they were to be approached by somebody, whether somebody had leverage over the driver or the driver is simply desperate and needs to make an extra buck, can happen. Now, the industry is one of the most highly regulated ones there is in the city, and it would be drivers are under glass all the time. So it would be very, very difficult for a driver all by himself to develop this kind of network. You would probably have to have something going on at the company level.
Yeah,
which
makes
means
sense.
you would have to have the backing of what you, Mr. Whitler, just called some entrepreneurial types. And these entrepreneurial types might be from a long ways away, but they would have very deep pockets and lots of ways and means of getting things done on the fly, shall we say. And that's what happens in my world.
Tell me about the light side, because you've given us a good understanding of the dark side of the books. What is the bright side?
The bright side is that people learn how to adapt, even under the worst circumstances. When I was living still in the city with my family, during the dark days of fall 08 and spring 09, when the global economy was literally burning down around everyone's ears, there were a lot of laments. There was a lot of pain. But in the end, you got to see how people, New Yorkers especially, but also people in general, managed to get their hands and heads around their situations and pull themselves out. Now, you live in New York City, you see this over and over. You saw it in the blackout, you saw it in 9/11, you saw it in the 93 bombings, and on and on and on. New Yorkers have proven themselves very resilient, and that inspired me for creating the characters that I have.
And you have a plethora of personalities in your book, and some of those we love to hate, and you really do have a really great cross-section.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and the only problem is if you read the books and you've got if you plan to go to New York for like the Christmas stuff, if you're already afraid of New York, because you know what this happens, Adam, people will want to go to New York, but they've got a little part of them that's afraid. Like they get into the subway for the first time ever, and they're not sure because they've heard all these stories. But there are movies that make it glamorous too. Yeah, just get in the subway.
Exactly. You see some butterflies flying around.
You see butterflies flying.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that the book is, you have to read it. Well, it's a great story. You're a great storyteller, Adam. Do you enjoy doing the fictional stuff as opposed to journalism?
I do, because it gives me a little bit more freedom to operate. Journalism, you're bound by very, very tight restrictions. The one thing I can carry from journalism into my fiction, which I insist on doing, and I've got some flack for this from people. I'm a stickler for accuracy, Mr. Whitler. I like getting my facts straight, and I document everything I write, which is why the acknowledgement sections in the back of all my books are so long. And people in the publishing industry say novelists shouldn't do that. There's too much research. You don't need these long acknowledgement sections. Yeah. I disagree. I was trained by historians. That was my major. And I was trained to document every single thing I say or write. I don't believe that just because something is on the internet, it's gospel truth. I like to verify. And that record of verification that's in the back of every single book, the acknowledgement sections, are the build sheets for how the book.
And I would appreciate that, because I can't remember how many books have I read that I thought, wait a minute, is this true? How do I find this out? And so that is a good thing to have. Adam, we've had like 22 seconds. Thank you for coming on the air. Congratulations on the success of what you're doing. And give us a rundown. How do we get the book? Just go to dunnbooks.com? Amazon?
Dunnbooks.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. I have worldwide distribution, English language. If the wholesalers can provide it, you can buy them.
Okay. Adam Dunn, call us if you need this information repeated. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. GOP presidential hopefuls facing off on a number of issues last night, including national security, at the CNN debate.
After calling Senator Ted Cruz a little bit of a maniac, Donald Trump now concludes
he has a wonderful temperament.
Cruz faced his sharpest attacks during the CNN debate on Salem Radio from fellow first-term Senator Marco Rubio.
Is Senator Cruz wrong?
He is, and so are those that voted for it.
Marco knows what he's saying.